There's something very dirty about crack. It leaves a smell. It leaves a tinge to everything it touches. And then there's that miraculous day that it's not there. All right, it's just a day, but what a day. Their body doesn't hurt, their heart doesn't feel tired. Think about it, when you put that stuff in your body for long enough, in sufficient quantities, some parts of the body, those that have to work harder, literally start to wear out. The heartbeat is substantially elevated during a crack trip. It's like running 1,000 meters, but hard running. Only you can't relax or sleep after. Your body's not going to let you. No chance. To have a day free of that, now that really feels good. I like hanging with Liz. We often walk our dogs together by Spanish banks. It's a place you can walk the dog, talk about anything, and know you live in the best place on earth, even if it's pouring. When Liz tells me things, I inevitably listen the way I listen to a client, even as we walk on the beach. I think I've developed a sixth sense about it. As a result, I can sometimes tell when something's going to happen. When she had some friends over for a few days and described their visit, I was shocked and surprised at myself to find the thought that they were going to split up going through my mind. I think this is one of the occupational hazards of the work I do. It's not being psychic. It's just picking up on certain cues. I tried to think what it would be like having a couple stay and witnessing their breakup. That would suck. I didn't say anything. Liz, the perfect mother and perfect host. If you're lucky enough to stay at her house, she organizes your stay and takes over. She does that because she's very good at it. She would organize their stay thoroughly and manage everything perfectly for her friend and her boyfriend. She's been my friend since I was 10, she told me. She's really the best friend you could have. She's like the Olympic gold medal winner of friends. Really? She's that sort of friend who would do anything for you. Anything? Yes. I have this comparative thing that goes on in my head sometimes. I think it's what happens when you have 3 brothers and a father who's not interested, even if you are the captain of the rugby squad at boarding school. Liz's friend was the best friend you could have. So what are my friends? Quite good friends, but not quite as good. Like my doctor, not so much he was the best in his graduating year as he finished his training without killing anyone. Well, at least he finished. I asked Liz, even if you crashed her car, she'd still be your friend? Of course. I've done so much stuff with her. What if you slept with her brother? She waved her hand aside as if that was nothing. Sister? What? Well, if you slept with her sister, I asked. I don't know, I never thought about it. How about if you slept with her father and then cheated on him with her sister? Liz said, you're sick, you know that. The weather was closing in. The bulk carriers in the bay were riding high, the waterlines showing. They were awaiting loading. There's 12 anchorages for those ships, and some of them are huge. My dog Otter was chasing a jogger in the distance. He likes a bite of vegan bum. It's great living here. 3 days into his treatment, Mike was 2 days clear for the first time in 5 years. Daily use of crack over a long period takes its toll. One of his comments was that he had forgotten what it is to feel normal, for his body not to hurt. In the meantime, Sophie was doing her best to make his body hurt quite a bit. She was giving him a thorough workout every day. Sophie had a body that was hard, like the skin stretched on a drum. She would take clients out and put them through their paces, sometimes in the gym, and at others running circuits of False Creek. She'd always be a few paces in front of them, and try as they might, they'd never catch her. She could outdistance a trainee as easily as an impala could escape from a tired old lion. And that's really what Mike was. He was tired and old. At 59 he'd been through the mill. He was pathetically attempting to hold on to his youth with the psychotic clothing and imagery of teenage rebellion. But it is just that. It's just an image. Beneath the crack use and fatigue, there was, however, still a human being. It's surprising. He's actually not in bad shape. He has a leanness to him that's beginning to shape up a bit, said Sophie. Good, I said. Do you think he can take a little more? Sure, he's not showing any signs of cracking. Step it up a little. Let's see how he likes a couple of hours a day instead of 1. The increased physical regime was not just my own private sadism exhibiting itself. There's no doubt that when we engage in a harsh physical regime, the mind remains very focused. If you don't have time to worry, you don't worry. And what Mike was going through was potentially hugely worrying. His body was by now craving coke in the form of crack. Our detox measures were working well. But this is far more complex than just addressing the physical side of things. The job is quite literally to change the way the client thinks, to change their mind in the most literal of ways. Well, hypnosis is good at that. By day 5 he was still clean, but there were cracks appearing around the edges. His 59-year-old body was holding up well, but as his head got clearer and he began to settle into a new sense of normality, he became increasingly maudlin. When I talked to Mike, I was reminded of what it was like talking to old soldiers. They too had that haggard tiredness, that look of having seen just a little too much, a knowing wish not to know. My parents survived the war in Europe, and their parents survived another. The challenge that our generation faces is a war of another kind. It's not the war on drugs in the US model, which is surrounded by fear, misconception, and above all, ignorance. It's a conflict inside daily society against addiction, be that an addiction to debt, or drugs, or alcohol, or adrenaline. We are a society that is surrounded by influences that drive us towards an opium of our own choice. And as the chosen ones, we are children of entitlement. Why should we not do what we want to do? We can handle it. We're all adults, after all, except we can't handle it. And the culture around that opium of choice is one of greed and lust and gluttony. And damn right I'll have my cake and eat it too. For one, it's the lust of consuming the drug. For another, it's the gluttony of living to the excess on proceeds of dealing drugs. After all, why should anyone choose to earn $15 an hour and live in a studio apartment, when by selling a little blow they can easily buy the car of their dreams and live in the finest high-rise project in Gastown? Let's step back from the morality questions for a moment. Suffice to say that for some people, living in a drug culture is simply another economic decision, a process rather than a discussion of ethics. Before long, Mike's true role in the economy began to reveal itself. Like any business, the world of drugs needs not only clients and suppliers, it needs its own communication system, a logistics network, and even its own banking system. That's where Mike fit in. He was too smart to be a dealer. Dealers run big risks. They're exposed every time they deal. They have to be careful what they sell, to who, and where they sell it. Invade another dealer's territory and you could end up with a knife in your kidneys. Sell to a cop, sell to someone with a health problem who then dies as a result of their habit. In fact, sell to someone who then gets caught with narcotics on them and you're exposed. Mike knew dealing is for those who are too dumb to make their money any other way. So he neatly avoided that side of things. Instead, he would lend money. Any dealer wanting to set up needs to finance their first few buys. Many continue needing finance to buy their stock, particularly if they are in the short-lived group that uses as well as sells. They don't last long generally. So lending to a dealer becomes a lucrative business. $10,000 today and pay me back $30,000 in 3 months. A little collateral, the documents on their inevitably expensive vehicle, and really it's all very civilized and sophisticated. The payback rate was pretty successful too. Occasionally someone would forget to pay back, in which case he'd sell their car. Not a bad system if you can forget who was buying the stuff. It was sufficiently far removed from the end user to make that quite possible. However, as Mike's head got cleaner, he began to realize he had to get out of this business. It would always suck him back in after all. He knew that a bank would give him a lousy 2% on a term deposit. 2%! It really was quite ridiculous. And of course, then there's the irony. He was borrowing from the bank against his house and lending the money to dealers. The mathematics of the system were curiously elegant.